Every wrestling legend follows their own path to fame and glory, but you won't be crowned wrestling royalty without harnessing the power of the masters to ignite your quest. Your rise to stardom begins at the feet of giants, and the only way to earn a legend's respect is victory. Training with the best is never easy, but wear those bruises with pride. You're going to need all the help you can get to unlock your potential and win the support of legendary wrestling icons. Once they're on your side, those legends become extremely powerful allies. Enlist their help as managers to energize your team. Wield their awesome power moves to tilt the match in your favor and unleash your own brand of mayhem. So, get ready to begin your legendary journey because it's time for WrestleQuest!
Hello and welcome to another session of IndieX 2023, and this time we have a game that is tailored for me, not only for me, but also to some of the people in our chat. Shiri is one of them, and one of my big friends and colleague from IndieX, João Machado. Of course, we're talking about WrestleQuest, a game that mixes not only amazing pixel art, RPG, but also old school wrestling. And it's a pleasure to not only to have WrestleQuest as part of IndieX 2023, but also to be able to have a chat about the game with Beca Peters, one of the developers from Megacat Studios, the creators of this amazing game that was released in late August. Hello, Becca. Thank you for being
Hi
with us.
there. Oh, I'm super glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us.
So, why so I was going to ask why wrestling, but that's kind of why should I ask that? Because wrestling, that's the answer. So of course, there's no why wrestling. But something curious about this game. We're not only playing wrestling, we're actually revisiting our own childhood because we're playing with our action figures. And I had wrestling action figures. So what was the idea behind doing an RPG, but it's also playing in our bedroom when we were kids?
So, for a big core part of the team, wrestling is super, super nostalgic for them. They absolutely remember growing up with these figures, and they had such a love for wrestling. They're like, we need to make a wrestling game that's like a little bit different than what other people were doing. And originally, it was going to be similar to other wrestling games that are out there. And then they took a lot more time to really think it through, and they were like, the things that we loved so much about wrestling are those like really intense and captivating storylines, and they're like, why not adapt that into something where like the storyline is like the real star that shines. And because here at megacat, like, retro gaming is just our constant passion, so being able to look at older games like Super Mario RPG, like Chrono Trigger, like stuff like that, where there's a lot of like old turn-based kind of things, and being able to take multiple things that we were all really nostalgic for and being able to like marry them in a way that was super fun and engaging really plays upon the nostalgia that we all have. You'll constantly hear us say like it is a love letter to both wrestling and RPGs, and it absolutely is, because those are two things that are incredibly important to us. So making the story like the shining star of this was the most important part.
And out of curiosity, I noticed that Megacat Studios released WrestleQuest in late August, August 23rd,
hmm
wasn't it? If I
hmm
recall. But you've also recently released the adaptation or your interpretation of Renfield, wasn't it?
hmm We were able to work with Universal. We were able to create an auto battler, similar to Vampire Survivors, which is an incredibly fun game, a super fun genre. We were doing our own take on that, and Universal was able to work with us to make something that was an adaptation of their Renfield movie, and it's been incredibly fun to be able to adapt on that genre, make something that's like a little bit flashier, that's got some absolutely incredible music behind it as well. and just develop that further. We worked on it all summer long in early access. We recently came out with the 1.0 of it as well, and we're still doing updates for it. So definitely check it out. It's got one of my favorite soundtracks probably of all time, which was like, I love our music team, but it was still like a surprise to me. I was like, oh, this is going to be like, oh, something fun. And I was just like, I'm going to sit here and listen to this on loop forever.
I have a few more questions for you. So
Mhm.
let's just pop WrestleQuest and start
Sure.
playing while actually we're talking about the music. The music of WrestleQuest, and I think you've noticed now that we changed the game.
Mhm.
Uh, it's an amazing soundtrack of synthwave. It's everything is original. It was composed by your people in your team, isn't it?
Mhm. We have an incredible music team that like I love talking to Elaine and Mitch to find their like inspirations. Aaron's also there. Like there's a whole bunch of them on our team. Like I wish I could have like the time to give all of them a shout out. They've all like made different pieces for these, but the different inspirations for each area. I know talking to Mitch, he wanted everything to feel like fresh and constantly like mixed up, and the whole idea is to like get you hype and really feel like you're immersed in each one of these incredibly diverse areas. I love it.
Yeah, you know something awesome. I got really curious of how big is the team, because you just released WrestleQuest. I know even in terms of business, you had the opportunity to work with Universal, so your window or time frame to release Renfield might have been short. But how can you be so effective, and with how many people work at MegaCat Studios? Because developing two games, even if it's an auto battler, there's still lots of work involved. And how did
Mhm.
you manage that?
I can't say I know exactly how many people are on the team like for that specific game. I know that we have them like split up like per game, and sometimes they end up like moving around, but there's certainly like a handful of key people who work on WrestleQuest itself. And like our music team is like working on like all of the games that we have going on in succession. Um, I would probably have to ask our CEO James exactly how many people worked on that from the developer side.
Yeah.
I'm on the marketing side specifically, so I'm a little less knowledgeable about exactly how many people had their hands on a specific game.
So we're seeing the beginning of the game. We
Mhm.
already, for all those fans of WWF, which was, for the younger audience, it was the name of WWE before they had to change the brand.
Mhm.
So all these wrestlers, they were part of my childhood and the childhood of a few of our viewers for sure. And what is happening now? We can notice, for example, the ring is made with Legos, or at least some
Mhm.
Lego-like pieces. Something funny. And how was it that the team actually got to this idea, this brainstorm? Because when I played WrestleQuest, I felt this was what my mind created when I was a kid. Like I built a ring with a shoebox. It was a terrible ring. Like it really sucked. But in my mind, I was doing these amazing wrestling matches, and this is more or less what's happening in WrestleQuest, isn't it? Because
Mhm.
we're even the Jumanji like area. Everything is like it's a kid that is playing with all their toys, and the action figures are the protagonists, isn't it?
Mhm. There's absolutely like just this incredible breadth of like different types of things that you would have seen as a child. There's the bright light caves that you get to later based on like different light up colored toys that you would have had, or just like I mean specifically having all these different characters show up that are based on like Legos or are based on Barbies or are based on maybe some of the monster figures that you would have had previously. Because when you're a child, maybe you had a couple different wrestling figurines, but, maybe you had some of your siblings' toys or something else, and you had to make do with what you had And that's kind of how this world really got fleshed out, is like there's stuffed animals, there's all kinds of things. You kind of just took whatever characters you had, made a cool scenario with them, and that's what's happening here as well. And that's like part of the different areas that you're going to find are not only inspired by like real world like wrestling areas, because different parts of the world express wrestling in different ways, but it's also like how would that translate to the world of toys as well.
Something also curious about WrestleQuest is the fact that you actually have some really well-known classic wrestlers. I don't want to go to pry into specifics, but was it a difficult task to actually negotiate this kind of appearance in a game like this, like an RPG? Because traditionally you usually see this kind of characters, let's call them characters, appear only on official or more traditional wrestling games. Was it difficult to convince them or their families to bring them to this world?
I would say that's a very case-by-case basis kind of thing. There was certainly a lot of legal work involved, making sure that everybody was getting what was best at the end of the day. So making sure that everybody was properly compensated for their appearances. But like the big thing was just hearing from their estates after we talked to them, after we let them know like what we were really trying to do here. And the full point was able to tell not only these original wrestling stories, but also giving especially like the estates and the wrestlers a chance to really like take control of their own story in a way and be able to craft the narrative of the legacy that they really wanted to leave behind. So it wasn't just like, hey, can we use you in the game? And then you have no say in it at the end of the day. It was very much like crafting with them, talking to them, working on like, what is it that you want to see here? What kind of a legacy do you want to leave as far as your story in a game like this? And I think that was really appealing to a lot of them at the end of the day, that you would be able to have some control of the narrative. Because I feel like a lot of times, and this is kind of explored in WrestleQuest too, it's like despite what narrative you want, if you're not the one who's in charge of crafting the narratives, sometimes the story doesn't go the way that maybe you personally want it to. And so it's about, embracing what they've done so far, but also being able to get to leave the legacy. And I think that was just really appealing for a lot of them. But we did a lot of negotiations with a lot of people, and it was like the ones who are working with us, absolutely incredible. And the ways we were able to showcase them in the game is also awesome. Being able to have all of these side quests with them, where you can explore doing the side quest and you can get special gear, or you can get them as like essentially a summon. That's one of the cool things in this game, is like instead of the traditional RPG summon, you'll have legendary wrestlers as a summon instead. Some of the wrestlers you can even get to be your manager, and they'll come in and they'll help support you, or they'll so not only support moves, but they will also be able to like maybe give debuffs to your enemies by smack talking them. There's all kinds of stuff that's really clever in the way that this was sort of orchestrated, with including the professional wrestlers, because they're important to the whole fabric of this. They're really like the legs that this stands on, while at the same time still being able to have a cast of original characters that were following their original stories.
I have to tell you, as a WWF era fan, I admit that it might be a selling point having Andre the Giant or Randy Savage, but what you notice is the game is so well crafted, and even mechanically, that it was something that I was going to talk to you about now. I think it's more like an added value, because imagine a situation where you weren't able to negotiate all these amazing wrestlers here in the game, the game would still be, for me, a really, really good game, a really good interpretation of what an RPG, an old school RPG, and wrestling. How could it mix? Because, for example, while we were talking, the tutorial was appearing and showing to all our viewers how the system works. It's a traditional RPG, like a turn-based. We select our actions, but at the same time, it has, like you said, that inspiration of Super Mario RPG. Like the ideas that Squaresoft introduced with Super Mario RPG, like the timing to give an extra damage, or even, and how does it work with the actual wrestling? For example, if I throw my opponent to the ropes, if I fail the timing to hit him again with the combo, I will be countered. And that's really an amazing and creative way of looking at wrestling and thinking, how can you turn this into an RPG? So, yeah. Then again, like having here Randy Savage is amazing, but I think WrestleQuest is an amazing game by its own.
I think part of the main reason that we have these statues where you can like pay homage is very much still rooted in that childhood. Like, these are my childhood idols that I'm looking up to. You're still creating your own stories as a kid. You're coming up with your own little storylines, but at the same time, it's like these are the ones that you look up to. Macho Man also looks up to Randy Savage, and it's something that you can really relate to. Like, I was always like looking up to this person as my hero, and so does he. And that's like part of what makes it so dynamic, that he fully believes that like wrestling is absolutely real to its core. Randy Savage is his hero. He's determined to make it just the same way, and so it's just like this incredible story of like, how does that affect his journey, because he feels that way. As far as like the actual gameplay goes, I know there's been like kind of a mixed reception, because there's some people who feel like having any dynamic button presses comes down to being quick time events, which I think there's like a little bit of a different dynamic. I'm a big fan of like Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, Super Mario RPG with more like dynamic button presses. And when I think of quick time events, I specifically think of like, this could have been a cutscene, but I have to push buttons instead. And the idea with this more of having these like dynamic button presses was just like, you have to feel like you're really involved in the action. We didn't want at any point for people to be like, I'm going to turn my brain off and mash A so that I can be like grinding away at these enemies just to level. The whole point of wrestling is that you are like fully immersed in it the whole time. When you are a wrestler and you are in the ring, you have to keep track of how much the crowd is hyped or not, so that you can change up what you're doing to make sure that you're getting the best result at the end. Because when it comes down to it, it is absolutely an incredible performance with not only beats that are planned out, but also just this level of improv on top. Because even if you have all of this planned out, if the crowd is not feeling it, you have to make sure that you're changing things up as you go as well. So that's part of the point of like keeping track of your hype meter, that you know when it's good to go. That's part of the point of having like the special moments that you have to hit, because there's certain things that you have to do in order to fulfill a match. There's so many different things to think about in here, and the idea is that we really wanted people to be like thinking and planning and dynamic and really feel like they were a part of the action, instead of just like, there's a couple button presses traditionally in RPGs where you're just like, okay, I just want to get through this fight, I have to level, let me just go do a bunch of these, press the button over and over and over. And I've done that before too, and I can understand the appeal of that, because people have gotten so used to it where they just want to like mash through, okay, I'm leveling, let me get to the important story bits. That's part of what we were trying. We really just wanted it to feel like an immersive experience where like every match that you were doing does matter in some way, and you have to pay attention in order to do well at it.
And what I noticed, at least I think this is a little nod to our childhood toys. For example, this Wrestle Raider also reminded me of the kind of plays we had when we were kids. Like suddenly, if we had a sister, maybe we could put Barbie fighting or doing a match with the Undertaker, for example. Because all toys are go. Okay, you can put a car in a wrestle match. I don't know. The imaginations was the limit, and you can feel this. For example, when we crossed with the statue of Randy Savage, there was this like mix of a mecha and someone dressed with a tie and suit. Obviously, also the idea. I think Randy Santos is correct me if I'm wrong. It's also the idea, like when we mixed parts of characters. Is it like this when we mixed parts of action figures?
I don't remember if for Randy that was the case specifically, but that definitely, you can see that reflected in the other toys for sure, where it's just like there are parts of them that are mixed and matched, like maybe you had broken toys, maybe you put them back together, or there are some toys that are set up that way on purpose where you're supposed to mix and match them so that it feels like you're making an all new character of your own. And that's definitely something that was really fundamental to playing with toys as a kid. And that's why I said before is like being able to see things like your sister's dolls or stuffed animals or other things that you had around just entirely. Like I said, there's a little guy who looks like he's made of Legos. Like there were all these different things that were available to you when you were young, and we wanted to make sure that we touched on those.
Yeah.
Some of the set pieces in later areas are just like giant toy blocks, like the blocks that have like the letters on them, stuff like that. So here we go.
Like this, it looks like a Lego character with
Yeah,
the
he
masses
looks like
of
a little Lego guy.
masses of the universe character too. I understand the criticism. I never felt the ideas that SquareSoft and then Nintendo by themselves and also other JRPGs across the last 2 decades did. I just think this kind of match and hitting a specific timing just makes the combat more dynamic, and it makes sense for a wrestling game. I think you get involved. It's not something that you will end up just pressing A because attack. No, you have to really put your mind into the match, because you might be countered if you fail your hit.
Well, and that's certainly the case, but at the same time, we also do want to make sure that this game is as accessible for everyone as possible so that they're able to experience the story in the way that's the most satisfying to them. So since the launch here, we've been putting out a series of patches, not only with small bug fixes, but also with a whole bunch of quality of life improvements, adding specifically like accessibility ones, but also adding things that are just like, hey, if you really just want to like speed through the story, there's options to like auto win the pinning mini game, or to not have to do the dynamic thing, because it's your story. You should be able to play it the way that you want to, and the whole point is that we want people to be able to experience their wrestling childhood in the way that's the most fun for them at the end of the day. So this is the way it was certainly intended to play, but I think it's also fine to be able to play in the way that makes you happy and makes you enjoy your time. We've all got like a short amount of time, most of the time at least, once you're an adult, to play games, and it's like you should be able to play the game in the way that is the most satisfying for you as well.
I was looking to our chat, and we have we have some really amazing interactions with someone on your team too. So, really, really good interactions. I think people are so immersed both in the game and in our chat that, well, no questions until now, aside from the usual jokes that people do to make me ask if there is a farming side of this game, but I don't believe there is. You just got cheered by your colleagues. Yeah, but I think this is a really amazing adaptation of like extrapolating what the child's imagination is. How we lost ourselves for hours doing this, creating these universes without toys, because things didn't need to make sense. They just need to make us have fun. And sometimes I think that nowadays we forget to have fun. And I'm not saying this because we're older. I think collectively, it looks like everything is more serious. There's more pressure on everything, even for kids. And I remember these times where things were more relaxed. Like I can put my Megatron doing a match with Hulk Hogan, because why not?
Because why not?
Yeah,
It's fun, and that's most of the point, is being able to make sure that the experience that you're having is fun at the end of the day. We don't have to worry about like what is specifically perfect all the time. Like, we can be creative and have fun, and that's part of the fun of being a child, is you haven't created any of these like imaginary rules in your head at that point. They can just do whatever and
yeah.
enjoy it.
And I feel that kind of I will call it naivete, with the best or the most positive way of using the word, because I think when we stop having any kind of naivete, I don't know, we lose that kind of capacity to mix things up, like we're seeing here in WrestleQuest. It makes sense because of that. We notice there are no constraints. These are toys that are coming into life, and they really believe, and Randy really believes in wrestling. It's his life.
Well, he almost has that childlike wonder, and like that's how he ends up being juxtaposed with some of the other characters that you end up playing later, where Randy is just, he really does embody that sense of like childlike wonder and like believing in it so wholeheartedly and so purely. He has not been jaded by the industry yet. He has not experienced the hardships of it yet. And it's like really exploring how that affects him in the industry because of that. And then seeing how some of the other characters, based on their experience, being stuck as a heel or, just being like a jaded industry veteran, how does that affect their experiences and like what's going on in the way that you're viewing the overall story as well, because you see how it affects these characters.
We just have Shiryu in our chat saying, if you get a physical version of this game, I will buy it again, because obviously Shiryu bought the game.
We are hoping for that too, for sure. Yeah. So keep an eye out for it. We are always requesting it. And the more hype that we get for it from everybody, the closer it becomes to reality.
Do you have a hype meter also in the studio to measure this?
That would be amazing. I'm gonna tell my boss, like, when are we getting a hype meter in the studio?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Check this out.
Well, if you don't want to spoil, don't answer this question, but is Randy going to have a heel turn?
Well, the thing with Randy specifically is that based on the decisions that you make, you can decide whether he leans more towards face or towards heel. So that's kind of a decision that's up to you.
Oh. Well, that's so. You have. Do we have different endings, or do we achieve different things depending on what kind of decisions we will make Randy do and have?
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about that right now.
Okay. Okay. So not answering is also an answer. Oh yeah, thank you, Professor Axman. Becca, are you a fan of wrestling?
You know what? I am now, but I was not when I started with Megacat. When I started with Megacat, I was just a big RPG fan.
Okay.
And everybody was like, "We've got this game. We've got WrestleQuest going. Like, how do you feel about that?" And I was like, I don't love or hate wrestling. I grew up around it, but it wasn't something that was big in my household. It was something that like my other friends had toys of it sometimes, or I would hear about friends talking about like, oh, this is what went on TV, or you'd see commercials for it or things like that. So I was like going to say I was like wrestling adjacent growing up, and I was like, I don't know about that. And then specifically back here in the spring when we went to PAX East, we actually had a wrestling ring brought in to the convention, and we brought in local wrestlers to actually perform live.
Oh.
And getting to see that in person, I was like, oh, I understand this now, and I love this now. And it's one of those, like, working at MegaCat with wrestling, it inevitably becomes like a chunk of your personality at some point. That's like all of our names and profile pictures on like our work Slack are all wrestling themed now.
Okay.
Like it just becomes a big thing. Like I'm a former like I liked doing theater kid stuff and improv stuff, and it's like I can see exactly like the one-to-one of like how this is incredible and really appeals to people. So I didn't used to be, but I'm completely on board now.
Before I ask you what I was going to ask you, let me just say, do you know Lucha Underground? Because Professor X-Men is talking about indie wrestling, and you can't go higher in terms of quality of wrestling as Lucha Underground. Does anyone in the chat know Lucha Underground? Do you know?
I don't personally, but I bet I'm going to hear about this later from
Yeah.
some of the other guys at the office who were just like, that's incredible.
Yeah, Lucha Underground is like a mix of indie wrestling with Mexican soap opera with the like low-grade fantasy. It's
Ooh,
amazing.
that's exciting.
It's amazing. So, what's your favorite in-game wrestler and real-life wrestler?
So my favorite in-game wrestler, as far as our main characters go, is Nozomi. He's from like the Japan-inspired area with like sumo and all kinds of stuff, and she's like a biker gang, and she uses her bike to fight. She's incredible. I love her character design. Got a lot more of like anime-inspired flair to it, but I love how different it is, and I'm always a fan of the girl characters. Her and Vanetta and Barbe are like they're all like my favorites, of course. And then my favorite outside of the ring, and also how we implemented him in game as well. I've always loved Andre the Giant.
Okay.
Because I wasn't originally a wrestling fan. I don't know if that's a silly segue, but like I
Princess
loved
Bride.
him in The Princess Bride,
Yeah,
and like he was
of
somebody that I
course.
knew for so long. And then seeing that we got to work with his estate and seeing how he's implemented in this game, he's a summon. I remember I had somebody specifically point out that Andre the Giant is not big enough on our cover art. And I was like, oh, sweet summer child, if only you knew, because you get him as a summon, and he comes in so large and in charge, and Godzilla-sized flips the ring for you. Like, it's such an incredible, incredible moment. Like, the first time I saw it was so impactful to me. I was just like, I love this so much. Like, please. Like, so that's part of why it all wraps in for me. Not just the game, but it's also outside of the game.
So, and we, for example, now we're in the snow area. It's not just the ice biome, isn't it? It's also for wrestling fans. How important? Oh, there's Invincible there, in the crowd.
Yep.
How
Not only that, but you missed Adam Eve earlier too.
Really?
He was in the cutscene with Randy Savage. He was
I was saying
so
like
you'll see
this-
a lot of really fun cameos in the game, not only from Invincible, but also from like some other influencers who are prominent in the community, other people who are involved just generally in the wrestling community.
I was
It
just
was
thinking,
important
for
for
example,
us.
Sorry.
Go ahead. So
So
now
I-
you get to learn how to do your walk-ons.
Yeah. So I was thinking, coming to almost after the tutorial, coming to the snow area, it's like a wink to how important Canada is for the wrestling scene.
I said each area, each biome, not only represents its own sort of like special themes, special like what type of toys there are, which wrestling federations they are, but they also have a lot of reflections on like real life sections of the world and how they interpret.
Well, I'm really so invested in yeah in in the, because it's so easy for you to like all the characters that get introduced to you, and you want to know them and you want to see the adventure that Randy will go
And I
through.
just love how fun this is, where you get to choose your own music, you choose your own effects. It's the same thing. Wrestlers get to choose that, and it really
Yeah.
sets up the vibe that you're going for when you come into the ring. That's incredibly important.
I think it encapsulates perfectly, and like I think it's when some people that have some kind of prejudice
There's Eve
towards
over on left.
my what? Sorry.
Adam Eve up in the left.
Oh yeah, there she is. Yeah. So people that have some kind of prejudice towards 2D games or pixel art games usually tend to or consider them oversimplified. And what we've been seeing in WrestleQuest is obviously one of those cases that proves everyone wrong on their own prejudice. Like the game is really encapsulates what the wrestling industry and the passion that goes around the wrestlers. Even this moment that we just went through, like choosing our own intro, is something really important. Maybe someone that is not invested in wrestling, they wouldn't realize how important is just this segment of us being able to choose the way we end. We have our intro, the song, if we have flashes, if we have confetti or whatever, But really good. I'm really amazed by this.
But that's part of what the whole mission was. This is a game for people who enjoy wrestling. It's a game for people who enjoy RPG. And the idea in marrying them together is that you should be able to enjoy it, whether you only started out with one or the other. And so ideally, this will make RPG fans more fans of wrestling, and wrestling fans more fans of RPGs as well. Hope everybody's able to really enjoy the experience.
And something that also shows is the fact that the developers behind this game really love wrestling, because I think only people really passionate about wrestling would go to those really small details that other people that are passionate about wrestling would recognize, and resound. It's not something superficial. It's something really deep in terms of the connection with wrestling. And it's really fun. Like we've been talking, I've been doing these matches, failing some timings, but it's normal because I've been spreading my attention. But the game is so vibrant, so beautiful. The attention to detail is so good. Really, it's a really amazing game. I think everyone at Megacat Studios are more than congratulations to you to the level you achieved with this game. Honestly. Okay.
Thank you. We're gonna keep making it better and better. We're constantly trying to add improvements to it. Not only that, we have more content that will certainly be on the way as well.
Yeah. And I know I just wanted to play more and just to keep on talking about WrestleQuest, but I think we're coming to an end to our streaming session. I also loved how this also looks like a wrestling match. The audience were also part of the entertainment, because they were also doing their parallel parallel action and good bantering and nice jokes.
Yes, perfect. That's what
Uh,
we want. We want the community to absolutely enjoy it. Thank you guys all for getting so hype, for getting absolutely involved. I love to see it all the time. Like I want to make sure that we are doing the most for you guys and making this the best experience it can be and bringing everybody together.
And from my side and IndieX, we would like to thank you for submitting WrestleQuest to this year's edition. We're really proud to have this game. I know that both me and João already had the game under our radar, because, like I said, pixel art, old school wrestling, RPG inspired by Mario and all the great games by Squaresoft, and then also by Nintendo. What can you ask more? It's immediately sold for us. So thank you for having WrestleQuest as part of IndieX. Becca,
Of course,
thank you
thank you so much for having us here.
for spending this hour chatting with us. And please, we have Sir Becca's has been pasting the link to WrestleQuest. It's already released, so go wishlist it, buy it, play it, enjoy it. This is it's a mandatory game for all the wrestling fans. Believe me. Forget all the AAA simulation games. This is the wrestling game to go to. Okay, guys, please go there. Thank you, everyone. Becca, thank you for being with us, and we're gonna do a small intermission, and we will return in a few minutes to another session, which will be, let me tell you, Chronique des Silencieux. And thank you, everyone. Becca, thanks again for being with us. And congratulations to all the team at Megacat Studios. Thank you.
Every wrestling legend follows their own path to fame and glory, but you won't be crowned wrestling royalty without harnessing the power of the masters to ignite your quest. Your rise to stardom begins at the feet of giants, and the only way to earn a legend's respect is victory. Training with the best is never easy, but wear those bruises with pride. You're going to need all the help you can get to unlock your potential and win the support of legendary wrestling icons. Once they're on your side, those legends become extremely powerful allies. Enlist their help as managers to energize your team. Wield their awesome power moves to tilt the match in your favor and unleash your own brand of mayhem. So, get ready to begin your legendary journey, because it's time for WrestleQuest!